Monday afternoon, Wisconsin is joining nearly 24 states in a lawsuit against the Trump administration to challenge cuts to public health research funding nationwide. Today, Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul's office announced a coalition of 22 states is suing the Trump administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the National Institutes of Health. The National Institutes of Health announced last week it would make cuts to grants that support research institutions which cover costs for biomedical research. UW-Madison says the proposed NIH funding change would disrupt vital research and delay discovery. Governor Tony Evers released a statement after the lawsuit announcement saying, quote, "The Trump administration's reckless federal funding cuts will be devastating for Wisconsin and a setback for millions of people who hope and pray every day for a cure or treatment that might save their life or the life of someone they love."